Today, I'm going to be attempting to survive 100 days in Minecraft Hardcore. So today, I'll be combining everything I achieved to showcase all these achievements. How much can I do in these 100 days? What farms do I build? Well, you're gonna have to stick around to the end to find out. So sit back, relax, and enjoy while I show you the story on how I survived 100 days in Minecraft Hardcore. Here we go. I spawned in the brand new world. I mean, how else am I supposed to start playing? Anyways, I chopped down a tree for wood and then crafted a crafting table along with a few sticks. I crafted a wooden pickaxe, axe, and sword, and then went running around looking for a few things to find in this world. Off in the distance, I came across a pillager outpost, and somehow, before I even got close to the outpost, a pillager had already noticed me, so I had to run around them without being hit. Heading over to the pillager outpost, inside the chest were a few items. We got some XP, some wood, some potatoes, not bad. So I left the pillager outpost running around in hopes that the pillagers wouldn't notice me. When leaving the pillager outpost, I found a ruined portal on the hill with a few more items such as iron ingots, a gold chestplate and boots, and some flint. I then moved on to collecting some food. Sorry animals, but it had to be done. Now that I had some food to keep me sorted for a little while, it was time to smelt it all. So I started mining to collect some cobblestone. I crafted a furnace, started cooking all my food, and then upgraded my tools from wood to stone. I let my food cook for a little while longer and then crafted a boat ready to go exploring. It was now time to go exploring, and on my journey, I found a shipwreck. I looted it, and then I went over to the buried treasure. I got some diamonds, and then started exploring even further, looking for the place to set up my first house. And then I started chopping down a ton of trees to clear out. By day 2, the entire area that I wanted to build my house in had been cleared out. Now that I think about it, I really should have saved some of the wood and other materials instead of just burning down the trees. Oh well, I guess it's too late now. I wanted to go ahead and start getting some armor as soon as possible, so I needed to do some preparations. I crafted up 2 chests, cleared out my inventory, and then went ahead and crafted myself a shield. And with the diamonds that I got from the buried treasure the previous day, I crafted a diamond pickaxe, and just like that, I was pretty much fully prepared to enter the caves in hopes to get all those valuable items. Entering the caves, we encountered our very first problem, and there was a massive drop, and currently I had no way to get down without dying. So I mined towards one of the cave walls, and once I reached that wall, I just mined down into the caves. I fought off a ton of mobs, and then it was time to start collecting a few materials. First, I collected a ton of iron and coal, and of course, I started fighting off all the mobs such as zombies and those extremely annoying skeletons as well. And then I ran around repeating the same process over and over in the cave for around 10 to 20 minutes or so, collecting tons of iron and other materials until it was finally time to upgrade my tools and armor. I crafted up a few extra furnaces and then started smelting all the iron that I had just collected. After waiting a little while, it was finally time to start crafting up some iron tools and armor. First, the leggings, and then the chestplate, and then finally the helmet, along with a few extra tools as well. Remaining in the mines for a little longer, I found a spawner floating in the ceiling. I went up to that spawner and it was a zombie spawner. I looked through the chest, but it was pretty much garbage. After looting that spawner, I actually got myself in a pretty interesting situation. Starting off for the first episode of my hardcore series, I had a few goals to achieve, and one of them was to get full diamond armor, which is exactly what we were going to be doing right about now. Since we were already in the mines, it was only common sense to stay down there and tick off the first goal of the episode. While exploring around, I got myself a pet fish, and then went exploring through all the caves. I came across my very first diamond vein, and this was in a water cave. I almost drowned trying to collect these diamonds, but I successfully collected them either way. I then started the task of going around collecting a ton of diamonds. Unfortunately, I lost one of the diamonds to lava, but that wasn't going to stop me. Though this task would take me quite a long time, I wasn't going to give up until I had enough diamonds to get myself full diamond armor. Going through the caves, exploring the 1.18 terrain was quite insane. This process took even longer because I didn't want to go back to the surface to get an enchant table to get fortune. However, after a very long time, I managed to amass over 40 diamonds, well, 42 to be exact. It's time to make our way back up to the surface, and while I make my way up, I want to quickly mention I'll be releasing an SMP at 500 Discord members. Link will be in the description. Back up at the surface, I went ahead and crafted up full diamond armor, completing the first goal of this world, along with the diamond tools as well. It was also now time time that I started working on a base. However, before we did that, there were a few preparations that needed to be completed first. First, I wanted to prepare the land a little bit, filling in all the random holes from the world generation with dirt, just to tidy up the land to make it look way better than what it was before. I had to mine a ton of dirt to complete this goal, and then going back and forwards filling in all these holes, digging up more dirt, doing this for the rest of the day. The next sort of preparation that I was going to have to do to actually build my first base was material collecting. Since we weren't in creative mode, we obviously don't have an infinite supply of materials to build this house. So I ran over to a nearby forest to collect a ton of oak wood and a few jungle trees as well. And I also found a cave inside of a mountain where I collected a ton of cobblestone, which can be used for stone bricks and other blocks for the house build as well. The materials that I had collected here definitely won't be enough. However, it is a good amount of materials to begin with, at least for the framework and the basic shape of the house. Here we go, this is it. I'm going to try and build a house. If you've ever watched any of my recent videos, you know that I completely suck at building, so this will certainly be a challenge. I actually wanted to make this house a double-story house for some strange reason, I don't know why. So once I completed the front of the first layer, I moved on to the second layer where I made another wall, and then I did a roof, and then after making the roof, I started doing all the windows. And once all the windows and the front of the house was complete, it was time to start building the final sides of the house to complete this building. And there we have it, the house is fully complete. And honestly, you guys might think this isn't a great build, but to be honest with you, I'm kind of impressed with the way it came out. This house is basically finished, besides the inside, but I don't think I ever show you guys the inside of this house for the entire 100 days. But we don't need to talk about the inside of the house. Ever. Anyways, finally after a lot of trial and error, I had completed the house build. So now it's time to move on to the next part of this video, and that is to reach the nether dimension. I returned back down into the mines and searched around the caves for quite some time, just looking for a lava pool. That's all I wanted, but apparently the one time I wanted a lava pool, I couldn't find one. So after looking around in the mines for quite a while, soon later I found a lava pool. I placed some water to turn the lava into obsidian, and then went on to mining up 14 obsidian for both a nether portal and an enchant table. I returned back to the surface on the night of day 18 and crafted myself an enchant table and used my XP levels along with some lapis to enchant all my armor. And with the extra obsidian from the mining trip, I built up a nether portal a little further away from the house because simply I don't want to hear those horrible portal sounds at all. Now that I was in the nether, it was time to search the entire place looking for the nether fortress. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I was certainly expecting this to take a long time. However, after about 5 minutes of looking around, off in the distance, I found the nether fortress. So I made my way over to the fortress, built up into it via the side of the fortress, and started looking around, exploring. I collected some nether warts from one of those farms. I don't know what these are called. Are they called nether farms or something? I don't know, I'm definitely overthinking this. Anyways, I continued looking around in the fortress for quite some time, looking for those blaze spawners. I went over to one of the blaze spawners and started killing all the blazes that I could. This was definitely one of the worst things that I could have done. After killing the blazes for quite some time, the worst thing that could have happened. I started losing hunger at an alarming rate, and if this continued, I wouldn't have enough hunger to heal when I would take damage from the blazes. I ate my final pork chop, but I decided to stay in the nether to kill even more blazes. This was definitely a stupid decision. But eventually, I got around 10 blaze rods, which is when I finally decided to leave the nether and get some food to heal up. I killed some hoglins on the way back home to get some food, which was also extremely risky considering I was on low health. On my way back to the portal, I actually found a massive bastion, and inside I would get some very nice loot. In one of the chests, I found an efficiency 5 diamond pickaxe, so I just continued looking around in the bastion, but to be honest, I didn't really find anything else besides the odd hoglin that I had to fight off. They were extremely annoying. Anyways, just before I would return back home, I made a quick pit stop at a warped forest biome to get a ton of ender pearls. I don't know if this is actually a thing or if it's just for me, I don't know, but every time I go to a warped forest biome, I get a ton of endermen spawning. So this was the perfect place for me to farm those endermen. I took out the final few endermen and then made my way back home. And now that I was back at home, I think it's a good time to start locating the stronghold. However, before I did that, I was going to need to enchant a bow that I had crafted. Putting it in the enchant table, I got power Power 1, which is a pretty standard enchant for the bow, and then I crafted up a couple Eyes of Ender, which then began the journey of locating the stronghold. I set off out on my boat and found a few ocean ruins, and additionally there were also 2 shipwrecks next to each other. However, I would leave all those behind as I had my priorities already set. I was going to locate the stronghold. I slowly made my way back to land, and it was time to throw another eye. Either I was getting closer to the stronghold or I had been going in a complete wrong direction. It could have been either of those options, and I also took a quick break to collect a ton of dark oak logs because I know for a fact that when I go to the end, I won't have enough arrows to defeat the Ender Dragon. And after running around for quite a while longer, I actually had located the stronghold. I dug down into the stronghold, and here we go. We are one step closer to completing the final goal of this video, and that was to defeat the Ender Dragon. Lucky for me, the end portal room was right next to where I had dug in, so I crafted the final eyes necessary to complete the end portal and then made my way off to the end. With the very few arrows I had, I started shooting out all the end crystals, missing a few shots in the process. Eventually, I ran out of arrows, so I had to pillar up to destroy the rest of the crystals. I went around using all my building blocks, building towards each pillar, destroying all the end crystals in the process, until eventually it was time to defeat the Ender Dragon. After having a quick conversation with the Ender Dragon, asking it to come down, and took many swings at it with my shiny diamond sword, but sadly, it wasn't enough to defeat the dragon. I waited a very long time for it to return back down, and then I took more swings at the dragon once it returned back again. But that still wasn't enough, so I had to wait even longer. But finally, after what seemed like the longest dragon fight ever, I took the final hits and defeated the dragon. I collected up all the XP scattered around on the land from defeating the dragon, and then collected the dragon egg, because we can't forget to grab that too. Now that I had defeated the dragon, collected all the XP, and of course collected the dragon egg, it was time to collect the final item necessary from the end, and this was the Elytra. First, I had to go and locate one of these end cities. I ran around for a little while, found my first end city off in the distance. However, before I could get too distracted by that end city, I started getting destroyed by an Enderman. I quickly placed down some water, fought off the Enderman, and then moved on to visiting that end city. Unfortunately, it didn't have an end city ship, so I ran around the outer end islands quite a lot longer until eventually I came across another end city which had the ship. So I went up to it, fought off some annoying shulkers, and then took the Elytra along with the dragon head. Returning back home, the first task on my agenda was to start collecting a ton of materials so we can start working on a brand new mob farm. You see, over the course of the next 50 to 60 days or so, I'm going to be spending my time building up a ton of automatic farms, which would allow me to produce tons and tons of items. So I started collecting a ton of cobblestone, just over half a double chest of it, and then I moved on to collecting some sand, and finally after collecting all that cobblestone and sand, I moved down into the mines to collect even more iron and redstone, and also additionally I went around collecting all those other obscure materials. Yeah, I was going to need a lot of these items. I located the area where I would build this farm and then gathered all the materials together in a chest. And now it was time to start putting together the very first farm. I started this farm by building up a fairly simple storage area using the chests and hoppers. Then I moved on to building up a platform. Once the first platform was complete, it was now time to start building up the main part of this farm, which was 10 smaller platforms where the mobs spawn on. And finally, once I had completed those 10 smaller platforms and placing observers and dispensers, it was time to build the final massive platform, acting as like a roof to block off all the sunlight, allowing for all the mobs to spawn. And now that I had just completed the mob farm, which produces around 10,000 materials per hour, it was time to take a different approach to these farms and build a semi-automatic XP farm off in the end. That's right, we're going to be building an Enderman XP farm. However, once again, we had a few materials to collect. The main block that I'm going to be using to build up this farm are leaves, as they're just so extremely easy to collect a ton of. Sometime through the material collecting stage, I took a brief change of plans to go and collect some shulker shells, because I knew very well if I wanted to transport all these items without taking multiple trips back and forwards from the overworld to the end, I was going to require some shulker boxes, ending with enough shulker shells to craft up about 2 shulker boxes. This should definitely do for now. I returned back home, collected all the final materials necessary, and then made my way back to the end to build up this Enderman XP farm. I first began placing lava and water, and while I waited for the lava to flow down, I killed a few Endermen for the Ender Pearls, as I would need these Ender Pearls to spawn the Endermite later on. I then bridged out over 100 blocks away from the main end island and started placing down a quick storage area. Then I had to build up to Y level 44 with this ring pattern. It was also at this point I kinda messed up this farm a little bit. I needed to go back to the overworld to collect some more cobblestone, since the Endermen can't actually spawn on leaves, meaning we can't build the spawning platform out of leaves. I returned back to the Enderman farm with a ton more cobblestone to finish this Enderman farm off, and then built out the spawning platform. And just like that, I now had a fully functional Enderman XP grinder for whenever I wanted to make max armor sets later on in the world. Sugarcane and bamboo are fairly useful materials. Sugarcane can be used for fireworks, and bamboo can be used for materials like scaffolding. So I think it's now time to build up a very basic sugarcane and bamboo farm. But first, like all farms, I need to go and collect some materials. For this farm, a lot of redstone is required, so let's grab a ton of that. I want to build this farm right next to the mob farm, so whenever I'm AFKing the mob grinder, I'm technically AFKing the sugarcane and bamboo farms as well. I made a quick example of how this farm would work. Basically, the observer connects to the piston using redstone, and then once that observer detects the sugarcane growing, a piston pushes out, breaking the sugarcane. And then using a railway system, I'll have a hopper minecart going around collecting all the items that are broken. So now it's time to build this in a slightly bigger scale. I first started with the sugarcane farm, adding a glass wall, and then the observers moving onto the pistons, and then the redstone, finally adding all the sugarcane and water. And just like that, the sugarcane farm is now complete, and it's time to start working on the bamboo farm. It's literally just copying the design from the sugarcane farm, but instead of sugarcane, it's bamboo. It's really easy. This time, I started planting the bamboo first. I then built out a little platform so I can easily place all the pistons, and then the observers. Finally connecting all the two using redstone, and then we have it. Fully working bamboo and sugarcane farm, which can easily be extended, making the farm larger as well in the future. So, it's time to return back to the nether now, because I'm going to be building up a blaze farm. I made my way back over to the nether fortress, and then I started looking around for the perfect spawner. I wanted to look for a spawner that was hidden inside a mountain, so I could just simply break a box around it, instead of having to build the box myself, if that makes any sense. I found the spawner that I wanted to use, and now all it was time to do was to clear out a massive area around this spawner. This was a very tedious task, as every time I tried to break the blocks, blazes would start to spawn and shoot at me, even though I spawn protected the area with glowstone. This process went on for quite a while, and on top of that, turns out I was making the box way too big, so that was a bit of a wasted time as well. But now the room had been hollowed out, it was time to start building up the walls so that we can have the exact size room for this farm. And a few finishing touches later, the farm was fully complete, and I can now farm blazes for blaze rods literally whenever I wanted. Before I started building my next farm, I wanted to go mining for some extra diamonds because clearly my armor was going to break very soon. So that's exactly what I was going to be doing. I went back down into the mines and found my first diamond vein pretty quickly, finding 8 diamonds in the first vein. I collected some lapis and more diamonds, and this is where something insane happened. I thought I found one normal spawner, however, right next to that spawner was another spawner. So there we go, we have 2 spawners right next to each other, right? Inside one of those chests, there was a looting book, which will definitely be important later on. But wait, there is more. Around 10 blocks away from the second spawner, I look up and there was another spawner. I continued strip mining, looking for some more diamonds, but literally 20 blocks later, I found another 2 spawners right next to each other. That's right, there are 5 spawner rooms right next to each other within like a 30 block radius. This was an insane find. It was definitely one of the luckiest things I've ever found in Minecraft. There were 2 golden apples in one of the chests as well, but apart from that, I just decided to leave the mines and return back to the surface. And now it was time to build the final farm for this little segment, an iron farm, which for how little this farm was, it was extremely annoying to build. I pretty much had all the materials necessary to build this farm, especially from all the other farms that I built up already, and I also had building blocks from the mining session that I just did. So once the general shape of the farm had been built up and the villagers had been moved into their little area with railways, it was time to bring a zombie over, which was an extremely tedious task, but eventually I figured it out and built up the final part of the farm, which was going to be the iron golem killing chamber, using all the lava and water and other stuff. Who knew a simple farm would be this complicated to build? Now that all those farms had been built up, I had set another goal for myself to blow up over 10,000 TNT. Yes, this is completely ridiculous and probably pointless as well, but don't question it. With the amount of TNT that we have, this would mean we had to quadruple the amount of mob farms that we had from the previous days. This was going to take a long time, but first we need to revisit the Nether Fortress again to take on some Wither Skeletons for Wither Skeleton skulls. Revisiting the fortress, I started killing all the Wither Skeletons, and after taking so many Wither Skeletons out, they finally decided to drop one skull. I attempted to kill more Wither Skeletons, however, they just didn't want to drop their skulls. So using the looting book from a few days ago, I returned back to my house, crafted up a brand new diamond sword, enchanted it, getting sharpness 1 and unbreaking 1, combined my old sword with the new one, getting sharpness 2, and then finally adding the looting 2 book onto the sword as well. Of course, naming it in the process, which you guys should totally do, by the way. And now it's time to return back to the Nether to kill more Wither Skeletons. And I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, I had no clue what was wrong with these skeletons. Even with looting 2, it took easily another 100 skeletons before I got my second skull. In every single one of these 100-day videos, I had terrible luck with these skulls. But now that I had the second skull, it was time to grind for the final skull. And once again, with another 50 to 100 Wither Skeletons down, with awful spawning rates, I had finally collected the third and final skull. And now I was able to leave this place not having to worry about the Wither Skeletons anymore. Well, at least for a long time, hopefully. Honestly, at that point, I should have just built up another Wither Skeleton farm or something. I returned back home, and now it was time to take on the Wither. I went far down into the mines, mined out a little room, placed down 4 soul sand and the 3 skulls, and then summoned the Wither. I had a few good hits on the Wither, and we also got quite low in some situations as well, but eventually we had successfully taken the Wither out. I crafted up the beacon, and now it was a good time to put it to good use. I used all the iron that I had collected, and now that I realize this, I actually didn't write down the days that I AFK'd. You see, I'd already AFK'd prior to this day, so technically by the end of this video we'll be way over 100 days. Oh well, I guess you get more gameplay and longer videos. Can't complain about that. Anyways, now that I had the beacon, I could start collecting all the materials I would need for this farm. I started with the cobblestone, as that would definitely be the easiest item to collect. I then moved back down into the mines once again to collect more iron, and had an extremely close encounter to dying in this time. I fell down, taking 4 damage, and then I got blown up by a creeper, and I also had skeletons shooting at me at the exact same time. That was way too close. Apart from that, I collected some more redstone as well. Although at this point, I hadn't collected enough materials that I would need to build the entire farm, I wanted to start building up some of it, doing as much as I could at the current time. The first goal was to build out 3 new large platforms where all the mobs would fall down to. You've already seen this once, so you should know exactly what I'm talking about, hopefully at least. All I needed to do now was just to copy the first farm that I had built, and there we go, all the platforms are now complete. And now those platforms were complete, I went back to the Nether to collect a ton more quartz, because they'll be useful for the observers. Heading back to the Nether portal, I actually nearly fell down a massive hole. 2 close encounters to death in the span of 10 or so days. Yeah, I should stop being so risky. When I came back home, I also wanted to collect my beacon so that I could collect more cobblestone near the farm if necessary later on. Of course, now we had to build the entirety of the 3 other farms. You've all seen how this goes. I first actually started filling in the bottom platforms with water, and then it was time to build up the other 10 platforms for each farm. When recording this, the replay mod actually stopped working, so instead, here's me building the first farm just 4 times. Wow, that's so crazy. But yeah, if you couldn't tell already, building 3 of these farms took a very long time. But trust me, at the end, blowing up over 10,000 TNT will be extremely cool. But now the 10 platforms were built up for all 4 farms, it was time to build up the mega platform on top. However, I quickly took a break from building these farms to go ahead and get my elytra. With some gunpowder that I'd been collecting from the first farm, I crafted some fireworks, and there we go. We can now fly for the very first time in this world. This was going to be way more useful than just running around. But good things have to come to an end, because we had to finish that mega platform on the top of those farms. And seriously, this took such a long time as well. I don't think I'll be building any mob farms anytime soon. So here's where things get a little interesting. Technically, I had to AFK for over 10 hours to collect collect all the materials, and well, that's exactly what I did. But if I were to count those AFK hours, that would be over 30 in-game days, which was going to be extremely boring for you guys, and that would mean I'd only show you like 70 normal days of gameplay. So I have decided to cut out all this AFK time and just continue on with the video. Hopefully you guys understand with this. I revisited the end, and then I went around looking for tons of end cities so I could kill a bunch of shulkers for more shulker shells, and then I returned back home, put all the gunpowder in these shulker boxes, and transported them to the new area where I'll be blowing up all this TNT. And just in case you didn't know already, you actually need sand to craft TNT. So I'm going to need to go around, fly to a desert biome, and collect a ton of sand. Yeah, literally nothing interesting happened, but sand collecting. I then went back to the area where I transported all the gunpowder to, and crafted up all the TNT. And finally, using all the TNT, I started placing it everywhere in the stronghold. The portal room, into other rooms, through all the corridors. I wasn't going to leave a single spot without TNT. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I guess that gives us somewhat understanding of how much TNT I'm going to be using. And now that all the rooms had been filled out with TNT, it was time to blow it all up. And this is what the area looked like once I'd blown up all the TNT. And that's it. That was 100 days in Minecraft Hardcore. If you like these 100-day videos, then check this one out next. And if you want to watch this entire series in the smaller episodes, then you can by watching this video.